All right. So VBS, we're basically going to be using Jonah and talking about Jonah and the well and everything. Is everybody familiar with that story? I know this group is. Are y'all familiar with it? So Monday night when we got to the beach, I got to reading it and reading through the lesson planners. Then I ended up reading the book of Jonah. In teen class, we've been talking about friends. We've been doing friends, and seen something in here that applied to teen class, and I've been studying it all week, and I decided to teach it in junior church. Bear with me. I want to get one thing. So I know some of y'all have not been in the teen class and heard the lesson on friends. We've been talking about our first lesson. We looked at the importance of friendship, and we talked about how your friends are the most influential people in your life. So our first lesson, we talked about the importance of choosing good friends. And then our second lesson, we talked about how God calls each of us to be good friends to others. Some of the other things we talked about is how people in your, we was talking about how your friends are the most influential people in your life, and the people you hang around with will influence you. And I got something in Jonah, and we're going to get into that now. I titled the lesson today, Guilty by Association. So, I can get this to work. This was a picture I took at the beach, and this was, I was reading Jonah this week, and I thought, and we'll see why I took this picture. But you see this? Me and Dina's on a boat. We're actually on a what was that thing called? No. The barge. We was on a barge. We loaded the truck on the barge, and we was going from one island to another, a ferry. So this was the direction we was going in the storm cloud. So I thought that was a neat picture, and I'd been reading Jonah and the whale. Huh? No.
Don't ever go deep sea fishing.
You'll throw all the people in after that.
Yeah, that day was probably worse.
All right. Let's start in Jonah, and we start out Jonah 1, chapter 1, verse 1. Now the word of the Lord came unto Jonah, the son of Ammonites, saying, Arise and go to Nineveh, that great city, and cry against it, for their wickedness has come up before me. But Jonah rose up and fled to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord, and went down to Joppa, where he found a ship going to Tarshish. So he paid the fare thereof, and went down unto it, to go with them to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. Now, I found this map, and I'm going to show you where Jonah was. Jonah was right here. He lived in Gath-Hepherah. Am I saying it right?
Doesn't look right.
Huh?
What are you saying?
Gath-Hepherah? Hepherah? All right. Okay. So anyway, this is where Jonah lived. And then we see in this map Jerusalem and Judea. That's all right in that area. So the Lord had give Jonah a task to go to Nineveh, which is up here. And you can see how far that away. I mean, he's got to walk or ride a horse. It's still a pretty good ways. But Jonah's running from God now. So in Jonah's task to run from God, instead of going from here to here, Jonah's running from God, and he's going to get as far away from God as he can. He takes a boat, and he's going to Tarshish. Now look how far Jonah's attempting to run from God. He's wanting to get as far away from God as he possibly can. God wants him to go to Nineveh. Why did he want him to go to Nineveh? He wanted him to preach to the Ninevites. We'll call them the Ninevites. I think I read in here they were called the Assyrians, but I'm not sure. So in go to verse 4, but the Lord sent out a great wind unto the sea. And we go here. The Lord sent out a great wind unto the sea, and there was a mighty tempest in the sea, so that the ship was like to be broken. And that was just a good little picture I took. They're on the ship, the water's coming over, and I thought about this a lot. We done 3 boat rides at the beach, so I thought about this. So and then verse 1 and then verse 5. And it says, then the mariners were afraid. And it said, and cried every man unto his God. So the storm itself, it wasn't an ordinary storm. We're talking about these the mariners on the ship. They're used to riding on the ocean and on the sea. And I think they're on the Mediterranean Sea. So these mariners are used to fishing and riding on the sea. So they were afraid. It says in verse 5, it says the mariners were afraid. So for them to be afraid, it was a massive storm, something they weren't used to. And it was a supernatural storm because it was sent by God. And then back in verse 5, it says, and they cried to every man unto his God, and cast forth the wares from the ship. So it says when they cried to it says every man cried unto his God. It's a little g. They're not praying to the God in heaven. They're praying to the God little g. And then it says they cast forth the wares that were in the ship unto the sea. The wares, what was that talking about? Wares. That was the contents of the ship. They're throwing so anything that's not, I'm jumping ahead in my notes, so I'm getting back where I am in my notes. So finding their prayers to their gods were insufficient or ineffectual or wasn't doing anything, they decided to lighten the ship that they might be able to keep their head above waters or save themselves. So the things they were throwing off the ship, they were throwing off their military weapons they had to defend themselves, their provisions, their ships, their food. So anything, whatever they was carrying from if they were probably carrying stuff from here over to Tarisha, and so they were throwing all that off. So my couple of points, when I read this, I seen something. We were talking about friends, and we were talking about in teen class, we were talking about friends. And we were talking about how people around you can influence you or can, if they're doing bad things, they can cause trouble upon you. So I wrote down a couple things. You can be held responsible for the people around you. Has anybody ever got in trouble? You didn't do it, but you was around somebody that was doing something and got in trouble. Don't turn around and look at people. Have you got in trouble for something you didn't do? Once or twice?
Probably.
Bristol, have you got in trouble for something you didn't do? Was your brother the cause of it?
Yeah.
Evan, have you got in trouble for something your sister done?
Well, siblings blaming siblings.
All right. It said, and I wrote here, because God was judging Jonah, and God had caused the sea to be rough because of Jonah. The mariners had nothing to do with this, but they were enduring his punishment. So I was thinking about something. I wrote this here. So when I was in elementary school, I was in the cafeteria. I was sitting with a group of boys that normally get in some kind of trouble or doing something, and I knew this, and I was sitting with them. One of the boys had wadded up a piece of paper, and he threw it and hit a teacher in the back of the head. So The teacher didn't know who threw it, but she knew the direction it come from. She knew it come from that direction right there. I'm going to just use y'all four as an example on the back row. But she knew it come from that direction. I was sitting there with them boys that were always getting in trouble. So every one of us got in trouble. And I was trying to point, well, he did it. I seen him do it, but that didn't matter because he denied it. So I ended up losing my break that afternoon. I didn't get to go to break. I had to sit in class, and I got in trouble for something I didn't do, but because I was sitting with a group of boys that normally get in trouble. And that's what's happening here on the ship. These mariners are in trouble because Jonah's running from God. But they don't know this at this point. So the second thing I wrote here, the people around you don't care if you get in trouble. I love it when I get my notes out of whack. Let me get my Bible here and find the right verse that goes with this. So where was Jonah? Did Jonah care if they were getting in trouble? Where was Jonah? We go down to verse 6. 7.
So the shipmaster came to him and said unto him, What meanest thou?
Wait a minute. Right here, verse 5. And the mariners were afraid and cast every man into, and they cried to every man unto his God. Where was Jonah? But Jonah was gone down into the sides of the ship, and he lay and was fast asleep. So Jonah was asleep. He didn't care what was going on. And if you're hanging around with people that's going to get you in trouble, they're not going to care if they get you in trouble or they care or anything like that. So 3, I wrote here, we think we can fix the situation. Jonah 1, verse 13, nevertheless the men rowed hard to bring it unto the land, but they could not. For the sea was wrought, and how you say that word? 113, temperous against them. 13. Get one of the smart kids. Temperous. Tempestus against them. So in their desperation after failing to escape the storm by their own efforts. So what they were doing, they were trying to escape by their own efforts. They were praying to their gods, and they were still trying to save by their own efforts. And then they were fighting against God. And then verse 14 we see they finally called on God of heaven. Wherefore they cried unto the Lord and said, We beseech thee, O Lord, we beseech thee, let us not perish for this man's life, and lay not upon his innocent blood, for thou, O Lord, hast done as it pleased thee. So now they're crying to the God in heaven. They're crying to God in heaven. How do they fix the problem? They threw Jonah overboard. They removed the problem. The problem, their problem was Jonah was on the ship. They threw Jonah overboard. So in 1:15, so they took up Jonah and cast him forth into the sea, and the sea ceased from her raging. So their problems were solved by removing Jonah. So a couple things I wrote here. Whenever we need to be aware of who we hang out with. We need to be aware of who we hang out with. So 1 Corinthians 15:33, it says, Be not deceived, evil communication corrupts good manner. Evil communication corrupts good manner. So if you're hanging out with somebody that's talking bad or using foul language, it will corrupt you if you're not on guard with it. Second thing I wrote down here, we may have friends in our life that is a bad influence. So I wrote Proverbs 13:20. He that walketh with the wise men shall be wise, but a companion of fools shall shall be destroyed. So a companion fool, as I talked about that little, when I was in the cafeteria, I was hanging out with them boys that were always getting in trouble and they were throwing the papers. We all got in trouble. I wasn't, it doesn't matter that I was not doing it or doing it. We all got in trouble. So the other thing I wrote down here was we have no power to change the behavior of others. So sometimes whenever, somebody's going in the wrong path, we don't have no power of ourselves to do it. So Proverbs 22, chapter 22, verse 24 through 25, make no friendship with an angry man. A furious man thou shalt not go, lest thou learn his ways and get a snare unto your soul. So who has, I said we don't have no power, but who has the power? God. Absolutely. So 2 Corinthians 7:14, it said, if my people which are called by my name shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face, and shall turn away from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven, and I will forgive their sins, and I will heal their heart. So we need to pray to God. So God, we talk about when people's living in sin, we always say we can't do it, God can. They just need to be saved. That's all I've got for today.